All right, people, welcome back to Cross Country Bank Angler. Today, I probably won't be doing a whole lot of fishing. My area just had this pretty significant cold front blow through a couple of days ago. Well, really yesterday, primarily. Earlier in the week, it had been quite warm. Actually, really a little warmer than usual for this time of year. It's early April and it was in the 80s, and then this front blew in and the temperature dropped about 30 degrees. I think the high today is in like the low 50s, and that's definitely, a big swing like that is most likely going to shut off the fish this time of year. Furthermore, this system also carried quite a bit of rain with it. You can see it's kind of an overcast day behind me. And it basically rained most of the day yesterday and some last night as well. And yeah, all that cool rain, that's gonna also cool down the water temperature. So I thought I'd go ahead and start off, trying to do another instructional video. It seems like people tend to like those videos. You can come here and learn something. So today the subject at hand is gonna be how to fish with artificial lures. This is kind of a broad subject, but I'm going to be breaking down into my top 5 tips like I've done in other videos. And that's kind of what this channel is about, right? When I am out there on the water fishing from the bank, this is a bank fishing channel, but I'm almost always fishing with lures. Most people that fish recreationally fish with lures, at least part of the time. And what do I mean exactly when I say artificial lure? Well, I'm basically referring to any type of fishing bait that is not kind of derived more or less directly from the natural environment. So, obviously no animals alive or dead, no minnows or worms or frogs or crayfish or whatever, leeches, nothing like that. That's obviously a natural live bait. No kind of grocery products, cheese or bread balls or meat, those would all fall in the natural bait category, not the artificial lure category. And no prepared baits like dough baits for catfish or kind of the ground up mealy baits that are used for carp sometimes. Those are mostly grain based. So we're talking about lures typically made from plastic or metal or wood. An example right here, this is a Whopper Plopper. This is a plastic bodied hard lure. And when I say ooh, didn't let it sit at all that time.
What, you just went into a straight retrieve and you hit it right away?
I did, gave it one pull and kabam. It's a fun lure when it works, that's for sure. Because you get some big hits on it. Stay hooked, buddy, stay hooked. Don't get any ideas, don't get any ideas. Oh yeah. It's not bad.
That's big. Lure.
And when I say hard lure, I mean a hard plastic lure. They can there's a lot of different categories of lures. So some pros of fishing with lures. Why should you do this? What's the upside? Maybe you're someone that has primarily fished with bait before, in the ocean or in fresh water, and you do very well. There's a certain skill set that comes with fishing with live bait and natural bait for sure, especially if you catch your own bait and stuff like that. Or maybe you took your kid fishing and they caught a few fish on like a bobber rig with a worm. That's kind of like the most basic fishing method out there, right? And they kind of want to get more into it. When you're in the store, they're going to the fishing section, pointing at the lures like, why don't we try this? And you kind of are like, well, I want to encourage this, but I don't really know where to start. Well, this video could definitely help someone in that situation, a parent or something. So some of the pros of fishing with lures, this is why you should fish with lures. One is less mess. You don't have to deal with, smelly dough baits or, dead fish or and or other kinds of critters and the various slime and stuff that they can leave. Worms can be pretty smelly and messy, leave a lot of residue on your hands, which can be a little annoying. So no mess. You don't have to catch your own bait or deal with them, and you're also kind of conserving the populations of those bait species. Two, at least in my opinion as a pro, is just kind of the fun factor. I think fishing with lures is more enjoyable. It's more engaging. You're usually a little more active when you're fishing with a lure because you're trying to make the lure look like something that is alive that a fish would want to eat, as opposed to just kind of waiting for the fish to find the bait. Also, if you're a catch and release guy, or if you want to get into doing more catch and release, then you should probably fish with lures too. A fish that strikes a lure is much less likely to be kind of deeply hooked, as opposed to when the fish takes a minnow or some kind of live or natural bait. They tend to swallow and eat whatever that is because it is the real thing, and these are not. So if you want to catch and release, it's much easier to de-hook a fish and get them back in the water with minimal lasting damage to them. If you're fishing with lures, like treble hooks and stuff like that, it is actually easier to get them back than when you're fishing with bait. Fourth pro in my book is efficiency. So you can fish a lot faster with lures, cover more ground, and furthermore, you're going to be able to kind of make repeat casts more quickly with lures most of the time. If you're fishing with a worm or a minnow or something, a lot of times once a fish bites it, that minnow or that worm is going to be killed or ripped up or be torn off the hook entirely. So you spend a lot of time fumbling with the bait, rebaiting your hooks, getting it back out there. With lures, a lot of the time you can just unhook the fish and you can keep using your lure. This is especially the case for hard-bodied lures. Some soft plastics, after a few fish they will tear on you and you have to replace them. So with soft plastics, it's not quite as big of a benefit. But there are some very durable plastics out there that you can catch dozens of fish on. So I guess potential downsides to fishing with lures, I guess it can get kind of expensive. If you're, it's easy to kind of, be enticed by a lure and think, oh, well, I want to try that one, so I'm going to buy that. And before you know, you've spent a lot of money. And, some lures out there can get pretty expensive. For example, this, the plopper that I picked up earlier, this is like a $15 lure a lot of the time. This swim bait here, this baby bullgill, this is about $12, $13. So that really adds up if you're buying a lot of lures in that price range. Now, I try to be very budget conscious and fish with inexpensive lures as much as possible. Another downside is that there are simply times when the fish are not going to be as likely to strike a lure as they are a natural bait. Under a lot of fishing pressure, for instance, where the fish have been caught before, or see a lot of lures, if they're just really not in much of a feeding mood, sometimes the fish will not strike lures as easily. And in those instances, sometimes live bait is just better. And I guess another small con is the species that you can catch on lures. Now, you can catch a lot of different species of fish with lures, but there are certain types of fish that are generally less likely to strike a lure than they are to eat a natural bait. Some examples would be like catfish or carp. Now, there's not to say that you can't catch those species of fish on lures, but the likelihood is definitely lower. So I want to go ahead and get into the tips that I wanted to touch on today. So the first is when to use artificial lures. And really, you can use lures year-round and they can catch fish. They can catch fish well year-round. But, there are times, in the dead of winter, for instance, where lures are maybe not going to be as effective sometimes as a natural bait. A slow-moving presentation in that cold water, like a minnow suspended under a bobber or something, can be more appealing than, trying to fish something fast through the water in the winter when the fish are more lethargic. lures tend to work best during periods of high activity. You know, that can be the spring, sometimes the fall. But really, you can fish with lures all year. That's what I do, and find some success. But just be aware that there are times during the year where lures are going to be more effective. Another time when you want to fish with lures is if you're targeting highly predatory species of fish. I'm talking about fish that are usually going to be apex predators in their environment or close to it. So I'm talking about things like, largemouth bass, trout, pike, muskie, large fish that are highly predatory in nature, meaning they'll eat a lot of, different smaller animals in their environment. But like I said, you can catch smaller fish on lures too if you're using smaller lures. So it's not like you can't, use small baits and catch, smaller fish like panfish as well. So keep that in mind. Oh, dude, stay hooked, please, dude. Oh my gosh. First freaking, or that was like a second cast. Oh my gosh, he's strong. It's a trout. Please don't get unhooked. Whoa, dude. The next tip I have here is just to do your research on lures. And what I mean by that is that there's just a huge variety of different lures out there. You've got topwater lures in a variety of different shapes and sizes. You've got soft plastic imitations, such as this Yum Lizard or this Bass Pro Shops Helgramite. You've got crankbaits, another type of hard-bodied lure. You also have other soft plastics like swim baits. There's wire-based baits like this spinner bait, for instance. You also have a variety of kind of jig-based baits, which is basically a hook with a lead weight molded onto it, like this bladed jig. This is a chatterbait, Z-Man chatterbait. This is the original chatterbait, 3/8 ounce, black and blue. If you pick out a lure, look it up on the internet, when you get home. There's probably going to be a video on YouTube or an article on how to fish it. Yeah, don't just grab something and just start casting it out and reeling it in and think that something's going to happen. Sometimes it's not that simple. You're going to want to fish something like this suspending jerkbait, for instance. This is a Rapala Husky Jerk in gold black back. A lot differently from, say, this Helgramite. So don't just go out to the water with no knowledge of how to use the lure. Research it, give yourself the best chance to succeed and develop some confidence. My third tip, but that's just to keep it moving. With natural baits, it makes a lot of sense to kind of go to a high percentage area in the river or the lake, set your bait out and sit there and wait. But with lures, the point is to kind of look for the active fish, the aggressive feeding fish in a given area. You can just cover water a lot faster. So, if you're in one spot and it's been 10 or 15 minutes, then you either need to change your location or change your presentation. But a lot of the times, changing your location is the better option unless you know for a fact that there are fish there and they're not biting your lure for whatever reason. The fourth tip, and if you're an experienced angler with natural baits, you'll probably understand this, but for the newbies out there, you want to match your gear to the lure that you are using. And that has to do with the size of the lure, the weight of the lure, and also, the action of the lure. So, for instance, you don't want to fish something pretty heavy like this Mike Bucca Baby Bullgill on an ultralight rod. If you try to cast that thing around on 4-pound test on an ultralight rod, you're probably going to snap the tip of your rod. Conversely, you're not going to want to fish something small like this Rapala original floating minnow on like your heavy, bait caster with 15-pound line, that lure weighs probably like 1/10 of an ounce. You're not going to get much distance. You'll probably backlash. So yeah, match your rods, match your lures, match the sizes. Usually when you're buying a rod, you can see kind of a weight rating on the rod itself. That'll tell you, what size of lure will work best on it. My 5th tip here, and I think this is especially important if you're just starting out here, is to understand that you need to cover the full water column with your lure selection. So if you're, going to pick up a few lures to try out for the very first time, and you want kind of a direction to go in, you want to have a lure that's going to cover the top of the water. So here I'm referring to the water surface. So kind of surface-oriented lure, something that's going to run just beneath it, like a wake bait, or on top of the water itself, like this soft plastic, the Stanley ribbit frog here. And conversely, for the middle of the water column, you're going to want a lure that is going to run in that part of the water. So that could be something, this is probably the broadest category. It could be something like this H2O Express lipless crankbait, or this swim bait that I showed you earlier. There's a fish, guys. Good one. Stay hooked, please. Stay hooked, buddy. Stay on. Stay on. Good fish. Big bass, guys. Big bass. Stay on. Stay on. Stay on. I got you. I got you. I got you. It's over for you. It's over for you, fish. Yes. Oh yeah, guys. This is a giant. This is a big one. Biggest of the year. Easy. That's gotta be at least 3. Let's get him unhooked. Or even this spinner bait. There's a lot of different choices for covering the kind of mid water column. And then you're going to want lures that work best along the bottom. So an example of that would be this Yum Lizard and June Bug. This is a lure that works well dragged slowly along the bottom. Another example would be the Bass Pro Shops Helgramite that I showed you earlier. So think about that when you're picking out those first few lures that you want to try. Cover the water column. So if you're just starting out, I do have a couple of lures that I would sort of recommend for beginners. I've kind of talked a little bit about some of the lures that I like in previous videos, but thinking again on that concept of covering the water column, let's start from on the top. So a good lure that I think most beginners can use that is a topwater lure. A good topwater lure for beginners is going to be a whopper plopper. I showed you that bigger one before. That was the 110. This is the 90 size. I think this color is just kind of called like shad or something. But I would say for a beginner, like the 90 or the 75 size is probably going to be the best for just going out and trying to catch a fish. But this lure, it's very simple to use. You basically just cast it and retrieve it back to you. Trying to get as much sound out of it as possible, but you can also, slow it down. You can pull it and pause it, let it float on the surface. So there's different ways to work it. It produces a unique action, and I've caught quite a few bass and pickerel on this before. So definitely recommend this as a topwater lure for beginners. This one is a bit on the pricier side as far as lures go. Like I said, these are about $13 to $15 for a whopper plopper at kind of their standard retail price. Some examples of good beginner lures for kind of covering that mid depth would be something like this rooster tail inline spinner. This is a 1/6 ounce. This color is called Fire Tiger. This is good for kind of low visibility conditions. And that's one of the first lures that I kind of built confidence in when I was starting out fishing. So another option for the middle of the water column would be a jig spinner. You guys know I love jig spinners. I have a video on those and I fish them a lot. So this is like a 1/8 ounce jig spinner with a beetle spin, that black and yellow body. That's the one I prefer for a beetle spin if I'm going to buy one from the store. Very universal bait that can catch a ton of different species of fish. Same with the inline spinner. Another good option for kind of that mid column would be some kind of swim bait, some kind of soft plastic swim bait. This is a 3-inch Bass Pro Shops Speed Shad. You can just fish that on a jig head, on a straight retrieve, and do quite well with that, particularly in clearer water. You know, an alternative there would be some other kind of small soft plastic, like this little 2-inch curl tail grub or like a straight tail grub. You know, these are kind of lures used more for crappie. This is a good kind of general purpose lure to try, and you can catch a bunch of species on that as well. Kind of maybe a runners up in this category would be some kind of small hard bait like this Rapala F5 size in silver. This is the floating minnow. This one is kind of light, so maybe this one's a little better for lighter gear, but another one that you can just kind of cast and reel it on a slow steady retrieve and you will get a few bites. For the bottom of the water column, I would probably recommend some kind of soft stick worm. This is the Yum Dinger. This color is called Watermelon Seed. Catch the fish, guys. Yep. Stay hooked. Good one. Please stay hooked. Got him. Ooh. All right, people. That's the biggest one of the day. Wow, we're having a stick bait day. I didn't really expect that out here at the lake. That's like a 14-inch fish. You can see I've got it rigged on a 3/0 extra wide gap hook here. This is a great beginner lure, especially if you want to catch bass and you want to, and you know they're not chasing. You want a lure along the bottom that can get through a lot of cover, you know, snags and wood. That one is gonna catch a lot of fish for you as a beginner. All right, people, so that's pretty much it for this video. I hope you learned something about fishing with artificial lures. If you're a beginner, maybe this will be kind of a good starting point for you. And yeah, you know, lure fishing, if you are thinking about getting into it, it can be a lot of fun. It's great if you're, you know, trying to get a kid interested in fishing, because it's just a little more activity for them to kind of focus on, as opposed to just kind of standing there and getting bored waiting for a bobber to get pulled under. So keep that in mind. If you like this kind of content, you should subscribe to the channel. I am going to be dropping weekly fishing videos here on Cross Country Bank Angler, typically you know, videos focused on bank fishing with lures, catch and release fishing primarily. And I don't have much else to say. I appreciate your support, and thanks for watching.